Hello and welcome to Talk Fulton. I'm Tania Boys for FGTV, and today we're up close and personal with Samir Abdullahi, Director of Economic Development. Samir, thank you for joining us.
A pleasure to be here.
So I'm excited about this conversation. You're excited about this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's jump into it. Tell me about your role as Director of Economic Development.
Sure. Economic development is such a funny word. It's like sustainability or technology. It kind of means what it means to the individual. For us at Fulton County, being what we'd call Regional Economic Development Agency, a lot of what we're doing is about bringing inbound opportunities. So that's working with our partners at the State Department of Economic Development, the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, our utility partners like Georgia Power and the EMCs, consultants, real estate executives that we work with, really looking at all those individuals and the different companies that they're able to touch and those that are prospectively looking at Metro Atlanta. And we try to help them find a home here within one of our 15 diverse cities, including the city of Atlanta. So for us, economic development is really much more of that traditional version around chasing opportunities, getting them focused on your community, and trying to locate those, really what we call recruitment services. The other aspect of that is retention services, so companies that are already on the ground here in Fulton County. I really partner a lot with our cities at that point. When you don't know a marketplace, you're trying to orient yourself, it's really nice to have that one ombudsman, which is what we serve as, to help you filter through the different communities. I want to open, a large data center in Fulton County. Well, maybe downtown Alpharetta is not the best location. That's what we'll help them orient with. And then again, on the city side, once you're actually here in the community, you feel much more attached to that city location. Now, there are things at the county, infrastructure-wise, that we can provide support, as well as kind of a regional thought process. And so that's kind of the value add that we can bring to cities on the retention side. There's a lot more that goes into economic development that we could talk about, whether it's small business development support, redevelopment activities, which I think we'll get to, especially related to Renew the District. I know we're going to talk about some of our workforce development efforts, really trying to pull that away from a exclusively social services activity and making it more of an empowerment activity, but also something that meets the current marketplace with the companies and their need for talent. And then we'll probably talk about Fulton Films as well, our most recent edition, which is a very industry-focused endeavor to look at all the great things that are happening in film and TV here in Fulton County.
Well, Samir, if you wanted to take my job, just do that.
Oh no, I like the backroom,
the
backroom deals and the handshakes and the like.
It's like you want to just come on, produce the show. Well, let's take a step back. Let's talk about how you got to Fulton County.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was doing my master's at the Andrew Young School right around the corner here at Georgia State University, and doing a focus around public policy, but a concentration in economic development. Really figured as a young person, if you can empower people economically, all the other aspects, political change and social change, all those things will kind of come about after the fact. And so I did my internship up in Gwinnett, at Partnership Gwinnett, which is a very robust economic development agency, somewhat built into the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce there. So kind of got a sense of the chamber world and how they practice economic development. As I said, it's somewhat different than what we would do here at the county. And shortly after there, going from research to more project management and technology, had a great opportunity to join what we call the Technology City of the South, which is the city of Alpharetta, right before Avalon was being built by North American Properties, which is Mark Toro and that gang, and then City Center, which is downtown with Sherry Morris and Morrison Fellows. So spent 3.5 years there, again, really building this brand identity of Technology City of the South. One of the most enjoyable things I got out of that was maybe 2 years in, former mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed's on stage at the State of the Region for the ARC, and he said Alpharetta alone has more technology companies than the city of Austin. Wow. That is not true. That is not the case at all. But now you get a sense of what economic development is. It's storytelling. It is marketing. It is trying to get people to want to be a part of what you are selling. And so to me, that was kind of a testament to the work and the promotion that we had done around getting technology companies focused and wanting to be a part of Alpharetta and really bringing on these world-class developments to reflect the type of knowledge-based worker and knowledge-based company that we wanted. So I was doing great things in Alpharetta. There's nothing to complain about. And former director of the Development Authority over here, our Development Authority, Fulton County, said, Samir, do you want to come downtown and be a change agent? And as a frustrated and silly millennial myself, I said I'm going to go in on the inside and be a change agent. And I've been here very thankfully and very blessed for the last 6 years. maybe in the last year and a half, moving up to director of Select Fulton, of building out the organization, building out the functions, building the team, changing the colors of our logos, and now really getting us to a very incredible point, which is, again, I'm not sure that's what we've accomplished, but helping to amplify the story of Fulton County, now being named the number 4 county for site selection in the United States. And that really means, based on the number of projects over the last 365 days, what were the locations that most companies were looking at? And Fulton County came up as number 4, a very desirable location. So it's a great product to sell. It's a great opportunity to be a part of all the great development that's happening here in Metro Atlanta, especially here in Fulton County. So very thankful to be here.
So what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like it's part liaison, part just kind of advocating for Fulton County and communicating with those stakeholders about the resources or the opportunities that await them should they have business in Fulton County.
It can be, yeah. I mean, in its most simplistic sense, I'll give you maybe 2 versions of it, is there's private industry and there are public agencies, and they don't speak the same language. So we try to operate as the translator in between, because we recognize the private market has needs, but also public entities and our constituency have needs. So how do we come to some kind of consensus that everyone feels like it's a win-win for themselves? The other piece of that, and it's not just because hanging out with companies is great, it's what pays the bills, literally. We're very blessed here in Fulton County to be 50% residential, 50% commercial in terms of our tax digest. The ebbs and flow of commercial taxation does not kind of swing as much as a house does. A house could go from $300,000 down to $150,000 as we saw during the recession. So if your housing makes up a large portion of your tax base, overnight you've lost half your taxes, which means half of the department directors you're going to interview won't have a job, right? Because that money goes away. Versus commercial buildings, they tend to hold their building, the valuation. More importantly, residents are great. They're very expensive. They want to call police and fire. They want to send their kids to school. There's a lot of service-intensive things that are required for residents. So for every dollar a resident puts into the taxation system, they take out more than $1 in services. A commercial entity puts in $1 in taxation and takes out less than $1. They have their own police. They don't go to school. They're covered in terms of service delivery. And so they're the ones that are really helping to, it's like when you go on a plane, you see other people in first class. They're really the ones paying for the flight. The people in economy aren't. It's that premium buyer. It's the same kind of thing. And so we are working to keep business not only coming here, but staying here and making us relevant in the marketplace, not only for now, but in the future for that ultimate fiscal security of Fulton County government. And that's why we exist as a department, is not only to, again, speak with companies and make sure they locate here, but ultimately to make sure that we can pay for all the services that the residents require.
Amazing. Okay, so I appreciate you speaking to the primary goals of Select Fulton and how your team is driving impact and growth across the county. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about Renew the District. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. As the county manager says, it's our largest redevelopment activity to date. The number seems to go up by like $10 million every time we look at it. So now we're up to $180 million in a public-private redevelopment initiative out on Fulton Industrial, really what we call the gateway area, so Fulton Industrial and I-20. There's 3 major activities that are occurring there, not only because Fulton Industrial is 44 million square feet of industrial space, probably the largest concentration in the Southeast. So a huge asset, and as I mentioned about taxation, just a great taxable jewel, not only for Fulton County, but City of South Fulton, and then ultimately Fulton County Schools. And then our Fulton County Executive Airport, formerly known as Charlie Brown. Again, we're working on the branding of that because 75% of their takeoff and landings are private jets or corporate jets, executive jets, the who's who of corporate America here in Atlanta. We know our other competitors are a little more active, but those are single prop, little small planes going up to Chattanooga. Those are nice. Those are cute. We deal with those that are, the Arthur Blanks of the world. So those that are moving the needle on the region. So having those 2 strategic assets is kind of why we're focused on that area. The 3 ways that we're doing redevelopment activities, one is the one that I'm principally focused on, is we have bought over 6 different properties, mainly hotels that were causing a lot of the crime, to be honest, the trafficking out there, and just a lot of the pedestrian walking around nuisance that somewhat gravitates towards an industrial area, especially when you've got truckers that pull off to the side because they're not ready to deliver and someone knocks on the window. It just feeds itself. So just by acquiring those hotels, we've done kind of a yeoman's work in addressing a lot of the public safety out there. A lot of the users out there recognize that there's just not people walking around. And we're putting those properties out for redevelopment, trying to get amenitized things, so food concepts, things for truckers to do or for them to eat as they're going along their way. Those are really the clients out on the district. So that's one major effort, is kind of those redevelopment of the properties. We've done some new public buildings and facilities out there. So our brand new state-of-the-art animal services facility is being built out, or just was completed at the beginning of this year. I always say, if I get injured downtown, don't take me to Grady, take me to our animal services facility, because the surgical unit is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's a really state-of-the-art, something to be, and I think a lot of communities, they don't have those type of services that they can be proud of. Definitely our animal shelter is, or animal services facility is by far world-class.
It's an amazing facility.
And then right behind it, we'll be building our new public safety training center and road course as well. Again, a lot of regional agencies like MARTA and other, they rely on us to provide some of those training facilities, since they're not large enough agencies to cover that. So that'll be another important piece, again, multi-million-dollar building and investment that occurs there. And then lastly, working to expand the Fulton Executive Airport, both from a hangar standpoint. Right now, I say we can't recruit another Fortune 500 in Metro Atlanta, short of us creating more hangar space out there. And we have real-world use cases of companies not being able to locate here because they couldn't park their jets, and real-world use cases where they are. The best example, Norfolk Southern, which is just kind of one of our more recent tenants. They built a brand new building in downtown. A Visa took their old building. So there's all these spillover effects that people don't really total up that add up to kind of a significant economic development presence, even when you're just talking about corporate jets. Unfortunately, they come with 4 or 5 jets every time they come to a new location. So having hangar space for that, and then the other part, we've got to expand the length of the runway. Right now, the modern G6s, and soon we'll get to G7s, these big, larger jets, fully fueled, can't take off from our runway because they're too heavy. And especially in the summertime, the air density is low. I don't think other markets that we compete with, like Dallas and LA, make their billionaires take off, fly up to Nashville, enter the traffic pattern, come back, land at Hartsville, Jackson, so they can get enough fuel and then go on their merry way to do business. It just doesn't look good. And now that Atlanta's the 6th largest metro, we've got to step up to the kind of the big boy ranking. So it's the thought of those 3 different efforts kind of combined represents the public-facing side of our investments. We'll get closer to that $100 million number with the airport, the acquisition of the properties, as well as those new public facilities, and hopeful, again, with the redevelopment of those properties and hopefully stimulating some additional redevelopment, $80+ million in new private investment that we would see out there. But trying to prime the pump with our public funds first. So a really exciting initiative. Unfortunately, it's a very multi-year, multi-phase, especially, you talk anything with airports, you're dealing with the FAA. It's just a series of things that we've tried to knit together under the framework and the brand identity of Renew the District, again, to signal to the private market that, we're invested, you should co-invest with us.
Absolutely. So just by talking about that, we kind of touched on some of the major impacts and successes that Select Fulton's work has been doing, or Select Fulton has been doing in 2024. Do you have any highlights or other highlights or major successes you want to share with us?
Sure. We've had, especially in, maybe the last 2 years, we've had some really great company announcements, especially in a very difficult kind of office environment. So whether that's Prize Picks, which is a homegrown company, and their new location, commitment to maybe over 1,100 jobs. We've got Cargill that's opened their new technology center down in Midtown. We had Boston Scientific that's opened their new facility up in Johns Creek. We had Morgan Stanley that took a large office lease. I think probably the largest new office lease in Metro Atlanta, or at least in one of those quarters, up in Alpharetta. So some of those really are just a testament to not only our growth in life science operations, which is a big targeted and focused industry for us over the next 3 years, but just to continue to see some of that additional new office leasing, even in some of those more restricted and tougher markets. In Atlanta and Fulton County, we are a growing population, and we're a fairly cost-effective destination. So a lot of what we're doing is competing with the West Coast and New England on their sensibilities and perceptions of what Georgia is, what the South is. Why would a senior developer that works at LinkedIn in downtown Oakland come over to Atlanta? They don't know anything about Atlanta. They only have a perception of what Atlanta is. So it's really about convincing those individuals that they can be successful here,
right.
Live their lifestyle, be independent, be diverse, and the like. And they're silly conversations to have, to be honest. I always say my cousin Vinny has done more damage for economic development in Georgia than anything has, is because people just have this perception. And so if you're going to be a competing corporate destination, kind of like Texas is, although it's a little more known of quantity. You've got to be relevant, and you've got to be not just from a cost standpoint, but from a culture standpoint.
I love that when you simplified earlier, you talked a little bit about, in layman's terms, how Select Fulton operates, and you mentioned the importance of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think that brings it down, or brings it to a level where everybody can kind of understand that importance, how the economy is affected by the stories that are driving the things that are happening in the county and around the world. But that specifically resonates with me, hearing storytelling, because this is production, this is TV. So I think that the
we got to remember who our customers are. They're people, right?
Yeah.
Like our clients and
Absolutely.
customers are people, and they're impacted by people.
Absolutely.
And if I can cut a wedge into a company executive used to live in Atlanta and let's come back and go to Georgia games again, if I can feed off of that, I'm going to absolutely feed off that storytelling.
Absolutely. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about technology. So, in the words of our chairman, Fulton County is a big deal.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the recognition that Fulton County has received for technology. What factors do you think are contributing to those achievements, and how is the county supporting business in the tech sector?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a twofold thing. One of it is the shakeup out of Silicon Valley. Again, it's one of these things that occurs that I have to go to LA if I'm going to make it in Hollywood. And maybe that's not the case anymore. I have to be in Silicon Valley if I'm going to be a tech entrepreneur. Maybe that's not. I mean, guys, MailChimp and others have showed us, like, you can have homegrown unicorns. You don't have to go out to the West Coast to do that. I think it's more for executives that have figured out, instead of competing with the FANGs, the Facebooks, the Amazons, and others, Netflixes, of I'm paying a senior developer $500,000 plus a bonus, and now someone's going to pay him $550 who works across the street, and then I'm going to pay him $600. They were just ping pong. It was terribly expensive. And so that was a big factor, was how can we locate in another market that's not so restrictive and crazy in terms of expenses as a senior leader of the company. But then also, these are knowledge-based jobs. Like, you're chasing the people as opposed to the people chasing the company per se. So you can't just locate and say, I'm opening an office in XYZ town. You've got to be able to find the right people there, or at least get the right people there. So that's the first piece, is like a recognition we can get out of Silicon Valley. Maybe the second piece of that is Atlanta continues, and I think we forget it because we're in the ether, to be a strong university town. You can throw a rock from Georgia Tech to Georgia State to Emory. A little hard to get up to UGA, but a little bit further out, on top of all our HSBCUs, right? Like, those are important factors for pumping out great talent. And a lot of that talent, similar like places like Philadelphia or Boston, stays locally. Like, they don't export as much. And Georgia Tech's done a better job of helping students create their job as opposed to go find a job. So there's been some of those smaller cultural changes, and you start to see a snowball effect. So we had Pandora, which came out of Oakland and located over at Atlantic Station. All of a sudden now we heard Amazon Music's coming over. I mentioned before Visa took the old Norfolk Southern building. Well, MasterCard heard about that and was kind of jealous, and so they took a bunch of space at Ponce City Market. So these things kind of start to feed off of each other, that like, hey, I could be a tech-centric town. If you go to Midtown, it is a bevy of corporate America's innovation centers, and that's where a lot of corporate America has gone. Instead of like having our own R&D teams, let's create these innovation centers where we're paying young entrepreneurs to create interesting things, and that'll be our R&D function. Like the freestyle machine at Coca-Cola, that was like out of an innovation center. Some guy just created that, and Coke's like, this is genius, we're going to buy your whole thing out. So like, you create kind of that kind of ecosystem thing, and it just continues to kind of snowball. Now we're like, we've got startup accelerators. We've got, I think we could do better on the VC side of things. So venture capital, Nashville and others kind of kick our butt a little bit more than they should. But having a venue for that, having a venue for investors to locate and connect with companies like Startup Circles and others. So all of that is kind of built off of itself, and now we're humming. Like we don't do, and the other piece of that, those are the big corporate names, is 400 is considered transaction alley. So 80% of all U.S. credit card transactions pass through companies located on Georgia 400. So the Global Payments of the world, the TSYSs of the world, the Fiservs of the world. That's been a very organic industry, fintech, and that continues to be a big and growing industry. Same with health IT. We used to have McKesson here, which became Change Healthcare. went up to their new headquarters in Nashville, but a very significant presence here, as well as surgical information systems. So like health IT, fintech, those are not, I mean, we have an aging population and a population that wants to do transactions through technology. Like those are big boom industries. Yeah. Those are great industries, and they're organically here on top of the visas and some of these other more traditional technology services companies, same with Microsoft and the like. So I think the word is kind of out that like, yes, you can be successful in Atlanta from a technology standpoint. I think I alluded to earlier, kind of our next pivot there is life science. There's no reason we shouldn't be capitalizing on that industry. That is another huge growth industry. Massachusetts and Boston does a great job in kicking our butts in that space. Same with San Diego and Raleigh-Durham. They're 20, 30 years ahead of where we probably should be. Our number one issue we hear is we just don't have life science space. So when they come here, they're going to have to wait 24 months to get a building. Nobody likes to do that. But with Emory here, CDC, I mean, there's a lot of things I think we could tap into to say we're relevant. There's a lot more work to be done, like what has been done on the technology side of things.
Absolutely. And it's exciting. I mean, it's a lot of work to do, but just like getting to where we are with technology, getting to where we are in another organic industry, film, the growth of film in Georgia.
Absolutely.
So it's an exciting journey, I'm sure. Speaking of film, the integration of Fulton Films into Select Fulton earlier this year, exciting development.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that partnership.
So I'll have to correct you a little, and it's just because of the way I frame the film industry. It's not necessarily organic, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
The state throws over $1 billion at it, right?
Okay.
I think in its most simplistic sense, if the state is willing to throw $1 billion at an industry, why would we not just play in the sandbox if they're already throwing the money at it, if that makes sense, right? Like all we have to do is just kind of play in the sandbox. When a company wants to come here, if they want to come to Fulton, I'm not giving them incentives. The state's giving them incentives. So that's great. Like I'm happy about that all day. It's same as like capturing the opportunities because the opportunity is already coming to you in that sense.
Okay.
So films, it's been a very interesting and fun addition for us. Again, we've got kind of industry focuses within Select Fulton, somewhat mirror the state in terms of targeted industries, like I mentioned before, technology, life science, logistics. One of those is film and TV. Film and TV, as I've realized, is a very unique industry. Just in terms of from like a workforce development standpoint, it's not a traditional place where you'd go to school, get a certification, and walk into a film set.
Right.
It is very credit driven, right? So you have to be on the film set, and that's how you are getting your master's degree, right? And moving up the production side of things. So that's one big differentiator. Again, it's not a 9-to-5 kind of work. It's very artistically driven, and so I think that impacts how you engage with that industry. Our normal suit and tie kind of prim and proper engagement with all the other kinds of industries doesn't necessarily work for that. And so that's why we have somewhat of a unique carve-out that is Fulton Films. Their two main focuses is not only using all the assets that we've got here at Fulton County and putting those out to the marketplace for film opportunities, again, things that we have that are unique, like a jail or some of our justice system partners, our airport, like not every town has a bunch of that, or you can't just build that on a set, something. So they've been very successful in that standpoint of just creating a lot of great dollars and revenues for Fulton County and creating kind of the liquidity of filming while you're here in Fulton by being film friendly, which is a term I've had to learn. And then the other aspect is we've got partners. Again, we don't do anything in silos. We've got partners at the mayor's office in Atlanta. DeKalb County has a substantial film and TV engagement apparatus through DeKalb's entertainment department, and then obviously the state of Georgia and Georgia Entertainment, pretty significant in their engagement of film and TV. So we work hard to just be a part of those conversations, add to the totality of Metro Atlanta and Georgia. And once they're coming to Georgia or Metro Atlanta, it's like 99% of it's going to come to Fulton County. It's like where the airport is, where MARTA is. It's very SAG friendly for the union. They can kind of get all their workers here, so they have to pay them additional pay to go outbound and doing heads and beds and things like that. So it's definitely being strategic and, again, engaging with an industry that's getting heavily subsidized by the state, like by far the most subsidized industry here in the state of Georgia. So just, again, really just making sure we're staying a part of those conversations and inspiring and investing in those that are part of that film industry.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to highlight, too, the programming that you all are creating coming out of Fulton Films is really strengthening the workforce. I know, so I've been in the industry, the film and TV industry, since, in some capacity, since 2014. And so knowing that importance of the caliber of students that are coming through Fulton County, myself included, these opportunities, sometimes we just need that workshop. Sometimes we just need those extra master classes to gain the exposure to certain things we haven't necessarily experienced on a film set or on a TV set. So really, Fulton Films is really filling a gap in that area.
Well, when we try to be good stewards and good ambassadors of it, I've taken too many Uber rides where the Uber driver said, I came to Atlanta to be a part of the film and TV industry. And some consultant said, I pay them X dollar and they'll help you get horror stories, So we really want to try to be a safe place that people feel like they can come and learn a little bit about the industry, get some directional sense, maybe build some network and relationship and community, but again, being kind of a trusted ambassador for that information flow, because I know it can be a little trepidatious out there.
Absolutely. Definitely bringing in trusted sources or pillars of information I've definitely seen you all doing that. So I do like to take a moment in every episode to just thank whoever I'm with for all the work that you're doing for Fulton County. We see it and acknowledge it and appreciate it. On that note, let's talk a little bit about WorkSource Fulton.
Yeah, absolutely.
It plays a critical role in the workforce development. Let's talk about how it contributes to the county's economic growth.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier. When we took over WorkSource Fulton, it wasn't the most empowered grant. I think they were a little behind on spending the dollars. Excuse me. But the important piece there, again, it was over in community development, kind of fledged as a social services activity. And again, it's one of those, you walk in and now we have to help you because you lost your job and I got to go all this paperwork. It wasn't a very inspired machinery. Again, as we talked with companies, incentives are nice, offering money, but those aren't deal makers. They're deal sweeteners, if that makes sense. It makes it nicer, but it's not going to make a change on the decision per se, especially if I can't be successful from a workforce development standpoint. And again, this is a knowledge-based economy, so it is people who use their minds for productivity. Companies have to chase those individuals. So it's this idea of like companies in need of people to work, people in need of work. It's kind of a simple math equation. But again, trying to take it from an empowerment standpoint of, it's unfortunate you lost your job. We've got jobs to fill today in these focus industries. If we could train you up, would you be interested in getting out of your comfort zone and going into this? And I say a focus or targeted industry because we have 30, 40,000 job openings here in Fulton County. We have 30 or 40,000 people that are unemployed. The only issue is the skills mismatch. Right. I have a beautician that's not a software developer, So how can I put them through our training programs? And it's not really ours per se. Again, we subsidize either a private or traditionally a technical college, so Atlanta Tech or Gwinnett Tech, to get them kind of a 2-year educational something or some type of industry credentials, always some type of certificate or credential they can walk into a job site and get a job that day. That's our goal. But that process takes a long time, right? You're talking about an individual who maybe became recently unemployed, trying to figure out what their next career path is, getting them into that technical college, getting them started, getting them to not quit because Amazon's offering them a job and now they can make money because now they can pay their power bill, things like that. So you've got to really walk them through that whole thing, help them with assistance along the way, and then work with the educational provider to make sure that they're getting a job within the industry that we actually train them in, and then measure that performance from beginning to end.
Right.
So it takes a lot. It's very resource intensive, but very proud that we've gone from something that was a little bit of a drabby kind of nobody wanted to touch it, which I see in most other communities, to a great tool that we're using, again, connecting companies with individuals, so doing on-the-job trainings or others. Using all of our funds, so we get about 300 individuals through 2-year technical college training each year, on top of another 150 so youth. So these are kids who didn't get their high school diploma. We work to get them in a GED, because once you get your GED, now you can go to technical college, and now I can convert you over and get you into an industry credential. So really just trying to connect the two, economic development and that business focus and kind of that swagger of business into the workforce development system and make it much more of an empowerment activity. And got a great leader there, Brett Lacey, that we took from the state, who's been here for 3 years now. He's a world-class leader, is well-known. He's one of the 3 kings of workforce development here in Atlanta. So very thankful to have his leadership and guidance and really turning it around, to be honest.
Awesome. I'm excited about that. I love it all goes back to storytelling, and I just love that when there's a thread that can loop through and kind of make the episode flow. So
yeah.
As we wrap up, any upcoming projects, developments we haven't touched on?
Well, I can't tell you about projects. That's all, NDA. And, that's that is the part I do like, the whole cloak and dagger. And I know when things are coming out long before they're going to come out. I would say, I've been so busy in November, I thought it was going to be quiet. So it makes me very hopeful for what 2025 is. I think now that we're post-election, it's a clear sense of direction. And just having kind of no clarity in the system is why I think since June of this year, many companies have been a little skittish in terms of decision making. It's all these things. It's the post-COVID return to work, and what does that look like? It's how do we integrate Gen Z into the future of our workplace? It's kind of all of these things. And then again, maybe we didn't even talk about AI and how does that impact productivity? How does that impact the scale of the workforce that you need? I will say, though, just a lot of these larger unknowns are starting to get filled in a little bit better, and decision-making at a leadership standpoint for companies is getting much better, which is helpful for us because we can help to know what levers to pull. So excited to see, again, continued leasing, continued development. We didn't even talk about data centers or like sports stadiums, so maybe that's for another day. And then continue to focus really exclusively or put a lot of thought process into South Fulton. North Fulton is it's very well built out with the 6 cities that we have up there. There's tons of opportunity for development in South Fulton. And if we sell ourselves as, one of the best metro areas in the United States, not all of our parts of the region have shared in all that success. And I think putting real focus and attention to the underserved areas is an important piece that we continue to have to address.
Samir, thank you for joining us today. This conversation has been so insightful and enlightening. As you mentioned, we didn't get to touch on everything, so we'll definitely have you back.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us for Talk Fulton. I'm Tania Boyes for FGTV. Be sure to connect with us on social, and we'll be up close and personal again.